In 2008, I was working in tech in New York, and the entire economy just imploded. And I was working at a company where they laid off a third of the workforce, myself included. And I remember sitting in that room listening to the CEO lay us off and looking around the room and realizing that none of the technical people in the company were being laid off. Next day, I went to the park and drank beer in the park during the day. And then the day after that, I started to learn how to code.
Skill Crush, it's helping a lot of women learn how to code, which is an intimidating thing. I have been the only girl developer on a couple of occasions, as well as the only female designer. The technology world is definitely very man-based.
There's a tiny little part of me that says, you know, there aren't any women, and who am I to think that I could be, that I could be that first woman.
I'm guilty of that myself. I know that I sometimes will basically make an assumption that, oh, she's a woman, so therefore she's probably not going to be very knowledgeable as far as coding goes or something like that, right? Even though you're consciously, you don't want to have that. After some very brief interaction, and when it becomes obvious that, oh, she really knows her stuff, then, all that is gone. But it's more about what is that default, what's that initial assumption about what her skill level is going to be.
It's not exclusively that there's very few women, there's also very few black people, there's very few, Hispanic people, there's just tend to be younger versus older in the tech industry. That's a real problem when it's an industry that is literally eating every other industry, and it is, literally setting, the groundwork for how humanity is going to communicate.
Women don't necessarily identify themselves as being interested in technology or self-identify as being capable of being programmers. I think that they don't really understand what the craft is about, and it's not even just women. I think in general there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what being a programmer is about, where you tend to think about it as being half machine or being born in the Matrix. When in fact I think programming is way more like writing and art. It's really about expression and organization, and I think it's something that women would be great at and are great at.
I think that working in kind of a man's world is empowering as a woman, to be the only girl in the room.
When you're coding, you go through this very sort of difficult process of putting something together, and it's kind of it's broken, then all of a sudden it comes together, and it's this glorious moment where it just it's ah! It just is a really fun, exciting experience.